This is a combat operations center, not a help desk. Hands off my screen. Gunnery Sergeant Cade Whitlock said it without turning his head. He said it the way a man says a thing he has said 100 times and expects to say 100 more. The watch floor did not look up. The radios did not stop. 0400. The Battalion Combat Operations Center ran hot under red-tinted light. 12 workstations, 4 radios stacked and hissing. 1 recall clock counting up in the corner of the big screen, the minutes climbing since the no-notice alert had dropped the battalion out of its beds and onto the road. And along the bottom of that screen, a single green bar. Accountability. 100%, it read. All hands counted. The woman at the screen wore a plain contractor's vest and a blank temporary badge, with no name on it and no rank anywhere on her. She had come in the night before, quietly, a systems technician sent to keep the common operational picture alive through the alert. Nobody had asked her much. Nobody asks the help desk much. She had been on the floor for 9 hours, and she had said perhaps 40 words in all of them. She fixed the picture, and she watched the floor, and she watched the clock. And she had a way of standing that took up no room, a stillness that made people forget she was there. It was a trained stillness. It looked like meekness, and it was the opposite of meekness. It was the stillness of someone who has learned that the fastest way to see a thing true is to make everyone stop performing for you. And the fastest way to do that is to become furniture. So she had become furniture. And from inside the furniture she had watched Gunnery Sergeant Cade Whitlock run his watch, and she had seen, in the way he ran it, the one thing a battalion cannot afford in the man who counts its people. He loved the picture more than the thing the picture was of. He kept his board green the way another man keeps his truck waxed, for the look of it, for what it said about him. And a board is not a truck. A board is 411 human beings, each of whom is somewhere, right now, whether or not the green agrees. She was looking at the map layer, at a friendly icon parked on a grid that did not match the grid in the text of the order scrolling beside it. "Grid's wrong," she said. Whitlock turned now. He was 36, and built for the turning, shoulders first. A man who used his size the way other men used a raised voice. "Say again?" "Staging point on the map. Grid's wrong. Order says one thing, your feed says another." She did not point. She just said it, flat, 3 words at a time, the way you read a gauge. "And the timestamp on your count is old, 14 minutes old." "The count is the count. The count is 14 minutes old," she said again. She read the order, the way other people read a clock. Her eyes went down the scrolling text and found the paragraph and the sub-paragraph and the reference line without hunting for them. And her hand came up and laid one flat finger against the accountability bar at the bottom of the screen, and then moved, line by invisible line, as if there were a roster there that only she could see, and she were counting it. Whitlock watched the hand. Something in it bothered him, and he did not know why. So he did what bothered men do. He crossed the floor. "You've been here 9 hours," he said. "I've run this board for 3 years. You keep your feet green and your mouth shut, and we're going to get along fine." "Grid's wrong," she said. "Fix it before you stage anybody on it." He put his hand on her arm. It was not a gentle hand. It closed above her elbow, and it turned her, 1/4 turn, away from the screen and toward the hatch, the way you turn a cart. She looked at the hand, not at the man. At the hand, across the floor, at a rack of servers with its access panel open, a heavy-set older civilian in a polo shirt and reading glasses looked up from a bundle of cable. Nestor Kellerman had run boards in this corps for 30 years before he ever ran them as a contractor. He had seen a great many people get their arm taken. He had never seen one look at the hand instead of the man. Let go of the arm, she said, not loud. Then I'll show you the gap. Whitlock laughed, but he let go, because a laugh needs both hands free. There's no gap. Board's green. Board's a picture. Pictures lie. She turned back to the screen. Paragraph 3, subparagraph 2. Recall accountability is by physical check-in at the staging point, logged by vehicle and by name, not by radio report. You're counting radio reports. He blinked. It was the reference number that did it. Nobody quotes paragraph 3, subparagraph 2 of an execute order at 4 in the morning. Nobody but a person who has lived inside that paragraph. Everybody counts by radio at first, he said. It catches up. Then walk me down the roster. She reached past him, not touching him, and pulled the accountability roster up on the side monitor. It filled the screen, name after name, 411 of them, each with a little green check. She put her flat hand at the top and began to move it down. She did not read the names aloud. She read the ones that were wrong. Second platoon, 2 vehicles. Call signs checked in by radio at 0340. Physical check-in at the staging point. Blank. Her hand slid. Weapons platoon, 1 truck. Radio, yes. Physical. Blank. Slid. Headquarters section, comm van. Radio, yes. Physical. Blank. Her hand reached the bottom and stopped. 22 names, green on your board. Not one of them physically counted at the point. 22 unverified. Data lag, Whitlock said. Fix your feet and stay out of my count. It's not a feed problem. She turned her head and looked at him for the first time, and her voice did not rise at all. It's a counting problem. You marked them present because the radio talked. The radio isn't a Marine. A Marine standing at the point is a Marine. A voice on a net is a voice. Kellerman had stopped working. He did not write anything down. He just stood at the open rack with a loop of cable in his hand and watched the way she moved her hand down the roster, 1 line at a time, touching each one. And he thought, I have seen that exact motion before. I have seen colonels do that. I have seen a battalion commander do that, walking a formation, counting heads with a flat hand, because a flat hand does not skip. He had not seen a contractor do it. You want to talk about counting, Whitlock said, and now there was heat in it. I've counted more Marines onto more trucks than you've had hot meals. I don't need a systems tech to teach me accountability. Then it'll be quick, she said. Walk the yard. If I'm wrong, I apologize and fix your feet. If I'm right, you found it before it moved. 2 sentences. For her, that was a speech. He didn't walk the yard. That was the tell that answered all her tells. A man confident in his count walks the yard because the walk can only make him look good. A man who will not walk the yard already knows what the walk would find. Kellerman had eased 2 steps closer under cover of running a cable, close enough now to see the side monitor over her shoulder, close enough to read the 22 blank physical check boxes for himself. His face did a slow, careful thing. He had signed reports like the green one. Everyone who had ever run a board had once, when they were young and fast and lucky. The difference between a watch chief and a good one was whether the luck ran out on your watch or someone else's, and whether you learned the right lesson when it did. Whitlock reached over her and cleared the roster off the side monitor with 2 keystrokes. The green board came back. 100%. There, he said. All better. He did not let it go. Men like Whitlock never let a thing go once it has looked at their hand instead of their face. He went to the watch log and typed. He read it aloud as he typed. For the floor. The way a man reads a thing aloud when he wants an audience to remember his version. 0411. Civilian contractor interfering with alert operations at the accountability workstation. Advised to return to systems maintenance role. Watch chief. Noted, she said. That was all. One word. He had given her a paragraph, and she gave him a word, and somehow the word sat heavier. The nickname started within the half hour. It moved across the floor the way nicknames move, low, between 2 workstations, then 3. The help desk. Somebody set it into a headset by accident, keyed hot, and half the net heard it, and there was the small, ugly warmth of a floor that has picked a target and is glad the target is not them. It is worth understanding what a watch floor is at 4 in the morning, 40 minutes into a no-notice alert. It is tired, and it is scared, and it is performing, every one of them, for the man who writes the watch bill and the counseling sheets. Whitlock was that man. When Whitlock decided the contractor was a problem, the floor decided it too. Not out of cruelty exactly, but out of the arithmetic of self-preservation that every junior enlisted learns in his first month. The watch chief's enemy is your enemy, at least until the watch is over. So they routed around her. They let the nickname ride. And the 2 or 3 of them who had their own doubts about the green board, Banning was not the only one, read the room and swallowed the doubts, because a green board is the watch chief's, and a watch chief remembers. That was the machinery she was standing inside. Not one bad man. A whole floor bent quietly around one bad man's need for a clean picture, each small silence reasonable on its own, the sum of them a lie with 22 names in it. At the 2nd Platoon workstation, a lance corporal named Theo Banning kept his eyes on his screen. He was 20, 6 months on the floor, and he had 2 trucks on his sheet that had talked on the radio and never shown up at the point. And he had said so once, quietly, an hour ago, and been told to keep the board green. So he kept the board green. He watched the contractor get logged and nicknamed, and he kept his mouth shut, and he hated the shape of his own shut mouth. The woman in the contractor's vest did none of the things a person does when a floor turns on them. She did not argue. She did not appeal to Whitlock. She did not leave. She opened a blank note on the maintenance tablet in her hand, the one she was supposed to be using for system logs, and she began, in a small, fixed hand, to write down times. 0340, radio check-in 2nd Platoon. 0411, watch chief log entry. 0420, 22 names unverified. Count certified green anyway. Each line to the minute, each line flat. She wrote the way she counted. 1 event, 1 line, no adjectives. A record is only a weapon if it has no feelings in it, and hers had none. Whitlock watched her write and misread it entirely. He saw a civilian sulking, taking notes to file some complaint that would land on a desk and die there, the way civilian complaints about watch chiefs die. He had survived 3 of those. Paper from the help desk did not frighten him. He went back to his stool and put his boots up on the cable run and let the floor settle back into its rhythm around the small, warm cruelty of having put someone in her place. He did not know that the woman taking notes had, in a plywood command post 15 years earlier, learned exactly what a green board is worth when nobody walks the yard. He did not know that the standard he was violating, the one that said, count bodies, not voices, had an author, and that the author was sitting 8 feet away in a contractor's vest, logging his watch to the minute. He knew none of it, and so he was comfortable, and comfort at 0420 on a night like this one is a kind of blindness. The board still read 100%. It was still a lie. And somewhere out in the dark of the staging yard, 22 Marines were either standing where they were supposed to stand, or they were not. And the difference between those 2 things was the whole reason a battalion counts. If a story about people who refuse to be counted out has ever put a hook in you, you already know how this one has to end. So subscribe to Honor Tales now, before the count comes due, because the ones who stay are the ones who see it land. At 0430, Whitlock certified the count to hire. He did it the easy way, the way that makes a watch look sharp. He took the green board and he built it into the accountability report, and he transmitted it up to regiment. 100% accounted, all hands, alert force ready to stage. He did not walk the yard. He did not pull the 22. He sent the picture because the picture was clean. And a clean picture at 0430 makes a watch chief look like a man who has his floor in his fist. Then he went to fix the other problem. That contractor, he told the assistant watch officer. Blank badge, no escort at a classified workstation. Flag it. I want her access pulled before the stage order drops. I don't want a help desk civilian near my accountability data. It was clever. It was almost admirable. He could not make her wrong about the count, so he would make her gone before the count mattered. He crossed to Banning next. He put a hand on the back of the young Marine's chair and leaned down and spoke low, so it read as mentorship to anyone watching. Your 2 trucks, he said. They up? Gunny, they checked in on the radio, but nobody's laid eyes on them at the point. 2 vehicles never physically. They up? I don't know. Then here's what you know. Whitlock's voice stayed warm, and that was the worst of it. You know your board is green. You know your watch chief certified it. You initial the roster, right there, and you let the grown-ups worry about the yard. You want to make it out of this watch clean, you sign your line. Banning looked at the 2 names. He looked at the little green checks that his own hand had not put there. Then he initialed the line, and his hand shook doing it. And the shake was the truest thing on the floor. Across the room, the contractor laid her flat hand on the side monitor again, on the place where the 22 lived under the green. And for one moment, her eyes went somewhere the COC could not follow. Somewhere with a different board, a different night. The same lie glowing the same green. The assistant watch officer, a nervous sergeant who did not want to be the one to pull a contractor's access without more than a watch chief's say-so, sat on the flag request for a few minutes, which was the only reason the next hour happened the way it did. Small mercies, a sergeant's hesitation, a slow badge office, the thin margins on which real nights turn. Then she came back, and she wrote another line on her tablet, to the minute. 0430. 100% certified to hire, 22 still unverified. Badge flag requested against systems contractor. Beneath it, she wrote one more line, and it was the only line all night with anything like a feeling in it, and even that feeling was cold. Same as before. Kellerman found her at the systems rack, where the noise of the fans gave 2 people a place to talk without the floor hearing it. He pretended to hand her a cable tester. He kept his voice under the fans. I ran boards in this corps for 30 years, he said. Master Gunnery Sergeant, retired. I've watched 10,000 people read an accountability roster. He looked at her. You're not reading that order. You're reading it like you wrote it. Someone did, she said. Yeah. He turned the cable tester over in his hands, so it would look like they were talking about the cable tester. Someone wrote the standard that says, you count bodies at the point and not voices on a net. Whole corps runs on it now. Every recall since about 2011. You want to tell me you just happened to have it memorized? She didn't answer that. She looked at the big screen, at the green bar, at the recall clock climbing past 40 minutes. He sent the report up already, Kellerman said, quieter. Regiment has a clean count with your 22 buried in it. He's flagged your badge. In about 10 minutes, you're going to be a civilian with no access standing in a passageway. And he's going to be the watch chief who ran 100% alert. He set the tester down. So, if you're who I'm starting to think you are, walk out that hatch right now. Let him certify one more time, and let the man hang himself with the paper. Don't get in front of it. Let it land on him. She thought about it. He watched her think about it, and he saw her log the time. He actually saw her eyes drop to the tablet and note the minute, because that was who she was. She time-stamped even this. You could let it land on him and keep your hands clean, Kellerman said. Walk out. Come back in 11 hours in your service uniform and let the investigation find it. Same result. He hangs either way. Not the same result, she said. The investigation finds it tomorrow. The yard is tonight. She let the fans fill the silence for a second. You know the difference between a report and a Marine, Master Guns. You spent 30 years knowing it. A report can wait until tomorrow. A Marine in a dead truck in a dark corner cannot. Kellerman looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, slowly, the nod of a man who has just been reminded of the thing he used to be and is not sorry to remember it. No, he said. It can't. He already sent Marines a lie, she said. Twice. She looked at the hatch. Then she looked at the floor. There's 2 trucks in that yard that talked on a radio and never showed up. I'm not walking past that. I did that once. She turned back toward the floor. Not the hatch. Before she reaches it, one thing. If you have made it this far into this watch with us, do the small, free thing that keeps these stories coming. Subscribe to Honor Tales. The count is about to run, and you are going to want to be standing here when the screen tells the truth. The board had read 100% that night, too. 2011. A different base, a different dark. A no-notice recall dropping a rifle company onto the road at an hour with no name. Captain Coralie Beaumont, 27 years old, company commander, standing in a plywood command post with a grease pencil board and a radio and a staging yard full of trucks and exhaust and young men who had been asleep an hour before. The board had read 100%. Her platoons had reported up by radio, called their numbers, and someone had written the numbers on the board in green grease pencil, and the board said all present, and the company was cleared to move. She had not walked the yard. That was the thing she carried. She had trusted the board. She had been 27 and proud of a fast, clean count, and she had trusted the radio the way you trust a thing that has never yet failed you. Corporal Danny Kessler was 21, 2nd Squad. His truck had called in on the radio. The vehicle commander had reported the crew up, all hands, because the vehicle commander had counted fast in the dark and gotten a number that felt right. Kessler had gone back for a radio mount he'd dropped. Nobody logged it. The truck set up. The board said green. The company staged. They found him at first light in the staging yard, under a 7-ton that had rolled a half-meter on a soft shoulder, while the drivers were repositioning in the dark. No one had been counting the ground because the board said everyone was on it. 21 years old. Off the manifest, unlooked for, because a voice on a net had said a number, and a number on a board had become a truth. And the truth had been a lie the whole time, and nobody's flat hand had ever walked the roster to catch it. She had been the one to find the gap in the end, and finding it too late was its own particular hell. She had walked the yard at first light, walked it herself, finally, boots on the gravel, counting with a flat hand, because a flat hand does not skip. And her count had come up one short, and she had known before she finished the walk whose one it was, because the radio net had been so sure, and the board had been so green, and the surest, greenest things are the ones that kill you. The vehicle commander who had reported Kessler up was 20 years old and had counted by the dome light and had believed his own number the way you believe a thing you want to be true. He was not a bad Marine. He was a fast one, on a night that punished speed. He carried it, too, afterward, in his own way, and that was part of the weight. The lie had not been malice. The lie had been a green board and a tired count and a system that let a voice stand in for a body. Malice she could have court-martialed. This she could only fix. She had stood over the green board at sunrise with the whole weight of it and she had understood, in a way that never afterward left her, that a picture is not a Marine. So she wrote the standard. It took her a year, and it cost her every promotion board's worth of quiet enemies, because the standard was inconvenient and slow, and it made watch chiefs walk yards at 4 a.m. Physical check-in, by name, by vehicle, at the point. No count is green until a body is seen. Every recall in the Corps ran on her rule now. Most of the Marines who ran on it had never heard her name. She was Lieutenant Colonel Coralie Beaumont, 42 years old. And in 11 hours, she was scheduled to stand in front of this battalion in her service uniform and take command of it. This battalion, this alert force, this floor. She had come in a night early in a contractor's vest with a blank badge, because you cannot see the true state of a unit once it knows the colonel is watching. She had wanted to see the alert honest, to see what the battalion did at 4 a.m. when it thought no one who mattered was in the room. Now she knew. 15 years later, the same lie glowed on a better screen. 22 names this time, and a watch chief who had just sent it up the chain with a clean hand. The stage order dropped at 0450. It come down the net hard and fast. Alert force to stage and prepare to move. All elements, by vehicle serial, execute. The floor surged, radios stacked up. The recall clock did not matter anymore. Now the movement clock did, and it was already running. This was the moment the whole night had been walking toward, and Beaumont had known it would come, because she had run enough alerts to know that the gap between a lie and a disaster is always a stage order. A green board is harmless right up until someone believes it enough to move on it. Certified to regiment, it had been a paperwork lie. Executed as a movement, it became 22 Marines, whose true location no longer mattered to anyone, because the force would be gone, and the yard would be empty, and the board would say they were aboard. That is how 2011 had happened. Not in one villainous act. In a green board meeting, a movement order at exactly the wrong minute, with no one's flat hand between them. She was not going to let the two meet. Not on this floor. Not on the floor that was about to be hers. Beaumont crossed the floor to the accountability workstation, and she raised her voice for the first time all night. Not loud, but pitched to carry, the flat command register that cuts a working floor without shouting. Before this 4 stages, she said, you have 22 Marines marked present who have never been physically checked in. 2 vehicles in 2nd Platoon, 1 in weapons, comm van in headquarters. You stage on this count. You are moving a force you have not counted, on a grid that is wrong, in the dark. She did not point at Whitlock. She pointed at the board. Walk the yard. Now, before a single serial rolls. For a moment, the floor heard her. That was the thing about the flat command register. It did not sound like a contractor. It sounded like a woman who had stood on a lot of floors and moved a lot of vehicles and buried, somewhere, a reason to be exact. 2 of the young Marines actually started to rise, started to reach for the roster, because the voice had told them to, and the voice had the shape of a lawful order, even coming from a blank badge. Banning's hand was already on his mouse, already pulling the physical check column back up, 22 blanks staring at him in the red light. The floor went quiet in a ring around her. Whitlock came off his stool. He saw the 2 Marines half rising. He saw Banning reaching for the roster. He saw a night's worth of a clean board and a clean report and a clean reputation about to come apart at the hands of a systems tech, and something in him that was more afraid than angry decided to end it with his body, because his body had ended things before. He crossed the space, and he did the thing he had done at 0400, because it had worked at 0400, and men repeat what works right up until the second it destroys them. "Get this contractor off my floor," he said, and his hand closed above her elbow, harder this time, and he turned her toward the hatch. "Okay," Beaumont said. And she smiled at him. It was the first time all night her face had done anything at all, and it was not a warm thing. And Whitlock, who had a lifetime of reading faces on floors, felt something drop in his stomach that he could not name. Because you learn, if you run boards long enough, that the dangerous one is never the one who shouts. The dangerous one is the one who goes quiet and logs the time and lets you walk her to the hatch with your own hand. He should have run. The screen changed. It was not dramatic. Nothing on a real COC screen is dramatic. The common operational picture flickered as the systems load pushed the command feed forward for the stage order, and the layer that carried the assumption of command and deployment authority for the alert force populated across the top of the big screen where the whole floor could see it. The document the entire alert existed to execute. The order naming who owned the force that was about to move. It resolved to the command line. First Lieutenant Nadia Cromarty, the battalion adjutant, 24, was standing at the ready board with the hard copy in her hands to match against the screen, the way an adjutant does, and she read the command line aloud out of pure procedure, because reading it aloud is her job before she understood what she was reading. Assuming command of the alert force, Cromarty read, Lieutenant Colonel Coralie Beaumont. One name. The floor did not understand it at first. A name on a screen is just a name. But the woman in the contractor's vest, the help desk, the one with the blank badge and Whitlock's hand still closed around her arm. She had not moved, and she had not looked at the screen, because she already knew what it said. She was looking at Whitlock, and Whitlock went rigid. It moved across his face in the order it always moves. Confusion first, the name and the vest, and the hand not fitting together. Then disbelief, the small headshake, the no. Then recognition, the awful click, the blank badge, and the paragraph 3 sub-paragraph 2, and the flat hand, walking the roster and the smile, all of it arriving at once and locking. Then horror, plain and total, as his own hand reported up to him what it was holding. His fingers were still around the arm of the officer, whose name was on the screen. The officer taking command of the force he had just certified with a lie. Cromarty looked up from the hard copy to the screen and back down, checking it against the paper the way she had been trained to, and her voice when it came the second time was very small. "It's the incoming commander, sir. She assumed command effective the alert. She's been in the chain since the order dropped." The adjutant's eyes found the contractor's vest, the blank badge, and did the same math the whole floor was doing. "She's been the commander the whole time." Kellerman, by his rack, let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Almost 30 years of watching bad watch chiefs meet the one they could not survive. And he said, to no one, quietly, "Told you. Reads it like she wrote it." "Gunnery Sergeant." Major Errol Sandoval, the operations officer, was already moving, his voice flat and carrying. "Step back from the commander. Now." Whitlock's hand opened. Beaumont did not rub her arm. She stepped one pace clear, turned, and looked at the floor. At all of it. The radios, the workstations, the green bar still glowing its lie along the bottom of the screen. And the floor came to its feet in a ragged wave, not because anyone called it, but because 40 people had just understood at the same moment who had been standing among them all night. "Sir," Sandoval said to her, and it was not a question. It was a Marine finding his feet. "Attention on deck was a beat late, Major," Beaumont said. "We'll work on that." Then, to the floor, in the same flat register, the words that mattered. "Stand down the stage order until we have a real count. Walk the yard. By name. By vehicle. At the point. Start with 2nd Platoon's 2 trucks." His hand had opened at last, 15 years too late for one Marine. Not too late, maybe. For 22. The report collapsed the moment someone looked at it honestly. Sandoval pulled the accountability certification and put 4 sergeants and Cromarty's adjutant section into the staging yard on foot with a printed roster and a red pen, and the standard did what the standard was written to do. No name got a check until a body stood at the point and answered to it. The green bar along the bottom of the screen broke apart into what it had always been, a picture, and under the picture, the real count assembled itself, 1 Marine at a time. 20 of the 22 were where they were supposed to be, tired and cold and annoyed, their vehicle commander's fast radio counts turning out to be right by luck. Luck is not a method. Beaumont said that once, quietly, to no one, and Kellerman, standing by his rack with his arms folded and something bright in his old eyes, heard it and nodded like a man hearing scripture he had helped write. The last 2 were not where they were supposed to be. 2nd Platoon's 2nd truck had rolled into the far corner of the staging yard in the dark, with a seized wheel bearing, and died there, out of sight of the point, its radio calling in a clean crew-up, because the vehicle commander had counted his people by the dome light and never noticed the corner of the yard he'd drifted into was outside the count. 2 Marines, a driver, and an assistant driver, sitting in a dead truck in a black corner of a yard that the board swore was empty, waiting for someone to come, certain someone would come, because someone always comes. Someone came, because someone finally counted. They were fine. That was the whole miracle of it, the small, unglamorous miracle that the standard existed to manufacture. They were fine, cold and bored and fine, and the only reason it was a story about 2 annoyed Marines in a dead truck instead of a story like the one from 2011 was that a woman in a contractor's vest had refused to let a picture stand in for a person. When the runner keyed the net, 2nd Platoon's last truck located, far corner, 2 souls, both up, vehicle deadlined. The COC went still in a different way than it had gone still all night. Not the ring of quiet around a confrontation. The quiet of a room doing the arithmetic. 2 Marines in a black corner, marked green on a board that had been certified to regiment and cleared to move a whole force out onto the road. If the stage order had run on Whitlock's count, the serials would have rolled, and the yard would have emptied, and the 2 men in the dead truck would have watched the taillights go and understood, slowly, that the board said they were already gone. Somebody near the back of the floor said, very softly, "God." Beaumont did not say anything. She had made a career out of not saying anything at the moment the arithmetic lands, because the arithmetic says it better than any commander can. Whitlock was relieved on the spot, for cause, and walked off the floor by the military police Sandoval called, not for temper, and not even, in the end, mostly for the hand on the arm, though the assault would be its own charge. He was walked off for the certification, for sending a 100% report up the chain that he knew was built on voices instead of bodies. A gun-decked accountability report in a deploying force is not a paperwork error. It is the exact failure the whole Corps had spent 15 years and one corporal learning never to forgive. The court-martial referral would say so in flat language he would read many times. If you have ever been the one in the room telling the truth while the whole floor kept its head down, this is the part to hold on to. So do the small thing and subscribe to honor tales, because the truth-tellers win here, and you should be in the room when they do. Lance Corporal Theo Banning was standing by his workstation, gray-faced, waiting to be walked off, too. He had signed the line. His initials were on the lie. Beaumont stopped in front of him. She looked at the roster on his screen, at his shaking hand initials, and then at him. "You told him twice," she said. "I have it logged. 0411 and 0420. You said 2 vehicles never checked in. He told you to sign. You signed. She let that sit. You were wrong to sign. You will never do it again. And the reason you'll never do it again is that you already know exactly what it feels like, which is more than most Marines learn in 20 years. She held his eyes. You're not walking off this floor. You're staying, and you're learning to run this board the right way. And someday, you're going to be the watch chief who makes some colonel in a contractor's vest very bored because there's nothing to catch. Understood? Aye, sir. His voice cracked on it, and he did not care. She held his eyes one beat longer, and then she gave him the only thing that mends a Marine who has just learned what his own signature can do. She gave him work. Sit back down. Pull the physical check column. You're going to run the reconciliation with the adjutant section. Every name, every vehicle, against the yard count as it comes in. You caught it twice tonight, and got talked out of it twice. Tonight, you don't get talked out of it. That's your board now. And Banning sat back down and put his hands on the keys, and his hands did not shake this time, because a man given the exact task that shamed him is a man handed a rope up out of the shame, and he climbed it. Sandoval watched the whole thing from 3 feet away and said nothing, which was its own lesson, filed silently by every Marine who saw it. The new commander had relieved a watch chief and rehabilitated a lance corporal inside of 5 minutes, and had raised her voice for neither. Later, when the yard was counted and the force staged clean on a grid she had personally corrected, Beaumont stood alone at the big screen in the emptying COC and looked at the accountability bar, green now, honestly green. 411 bodies seen by 411 pairs of eyes at the point. Somewhere, a corporal's name stayed on a manifest because she never stopped counting. She let herself think about him for exactly the length of one breath, which was the discipline of it. You carry them. You do not drown in them. And then she opened a message on a secure terminal to a coalition headquarters, half a world away. To a liaison officer she had worked with in 3 theaters, a man named Marek Dolan, and she typed 6 words that would mean nothing to anyone who read them over her shoulder, and everything to the one man they were for. The Count is honest again. Coming. Kellerman found her there, at the screen, before he left for the night. He did not salute. He was a civilian now, and anyway, it was not that kind of moment. He just stood beside her a while and looked at the honest green with her. You could have walked out at 4, he said. Come back at 1500. Cut the ribbon. Never gotten your sleeve wrinkled. Nobody would have known the difference. 2 Marines in a dead truck would have known the difference. Yeah, he was quiet. The standard. 2011. That was you. That was a corporal named Kessler, she said. I just wrote down what he cost. She looked at the green bar, at the 411 honest checks. People think the standard is about paperwork. It isn't. It's about the fact that a voice on a net is a wish, and a body at the point is a Marine, and a commander who can't tell the two apart will eventually leave one of her people in the dark and call it 100%. She finally looked away from the screen. I've done that once. I don't do it twice. Kellerman nodded and picked up his tool bag, and at the hatch he turned back. Battalion's lucky, he said. They just don't know it yet. They will, Beaumont said, at 1500. And there was, for the first time all night, the smallest dry warmth in it. She shut the terminal. In 11 hours, she would put on her service uniform and stand in front of this battalion and take command of it in the daylight, with her name read aloud and everyone watching. But she had already taken command of it here, at 0400, in a contractor's vest, with a flat hand on a roster and the truth on her side. That was the version that counted. Those always are. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.